Pathmark is the intelligent tool for website lead generation. With increasing online competition, over 98% of website visitors don't convert. The ability to successfully show your value proposition and support visitors in their buying journey separates you from the competition online. Pathmark qualifies and converts leads on your website by figuring out where they are in the buying journey and influencing them in key decision moments with relevant micro experiences like case studies, intro videos, and much more. Stay relevant to your visitors and increase conversions by 50%. Add Pathmark to your website in seconds. Let the AI do all the work and get access to 50% more qualified leads while you keep doing marketing and sales as usual. Check us on pathmark.com. Welcome to today's episode. Let's talk about today's guest. We have Sil from Census, head of operations there with them. How are you doing today, Sil?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here with you.
Awesome. Great to have you on, and great to have Census on here with us. And I'm sure our listeners are tuning in, wondering what Census is all about. So let's kick it off with that, Sil. In your own words, can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah. I mean, at Census, we solve a very simple problem. Is like usually you have marketing team, sales team, kind of like go-to-market team that they know the data exists. They've seen it in a chart, they've seen it somewhere, and they're like, oh, if only I could get it access to that data in my, my hotspot, my Marketo, my Braze, my Salesforce, right? Like that's literally what we do. We connect the warehouse, like the only place where people store the data, to tools like Salesforce, and we make it like kind of like a no-code experience for go-to-marketing to sell the data, so they don't have to send that Jira ticket that get lost, in a backlog somewhere, right? Like, so once you've set it up, any marketing person can be like, yeah, I know the data exists. I sync it to my field in Hotspot, Marketo, the tool, you name it. We have 200% integration, and that's it. That's simple, but it unlocks so many new campaign ideas, experimentation that teams can do with it. It's really powerful.
Awesome. Great. I mean, I know Census is the first data activation platform built on your warehouse. So that's really good to hear from you, Sil. And on that note, then, is there then a vertical? Is there a segment? Is there an ideal ICP that Census likes to go for?
Yeah. I mean, for us, like, the best company for us, sadly, there's not like a vertical, but like the way I describe that is people where the company where there's like tons of customers that generate data, and then the asymmetry with like the go-to-market team, whether it's a marketing sales team, is like very small, right? So it's like, for us, it means like company that are like focusing like a PLG motion, like you can think the Canvas of the world, the Figmas of the world, where, they have like millions of users that there'll never be enough human to sell to everyone, right? Like that's a good example. Or more like on the retails, like big brand side. So, gaming company like Activision, right? Like you have to think about like how many gamers are out there playing video games, sharing lots of data. And so they want to use that data to build like better marketing campaigns, things like that. That's kind of like the best sweet spot for us, because Census like bring that kind of like data leverage to those teams to help them do more with the data that they have, right? And so that's like that's when we bring the most value to company, right? Like, if you're a company that's selling like $5-10 million deals a year, and you have 5-person sales team and like 200 customers, like there's probably not that much value for a tool like us, I would say.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And so then on that note, I mean, is there a top client acquisition channel there for Census? What would that be?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's very interesting, like going back to what you talked about Pathmark, like for us is like the top channel is really kind of like organic traffic, community-led. People used to be calling that community-led, like really it's like word of mouth 2.0 for me, right? It's like people talk about Census out there in the communities. They find us through like, classic mean, they'll be like, oh, what is this Census data thing? They Google that, they come to our website. And so for us is very much like this kind of like organic word of mouth. Of course, we do paid channels, things like that, display to increase awareness, like, increase our brand impression and capture like, high intent on the market. Obviously we like page, like we buy keywords such as like, Salesforce, Snowflake to Salesforce, things like that, right? The high intent bottom of the funnel keyword, but like really the main driver for us is going to be like this kind of like referrals, either from like peers, right? Or partners and agencies, right? Like for like the company, a company like Coca-Cola, they're going to look up to their partners like the Accentures of the world to tell them what to implement to solve their problem. And so like Accenture will do the recommendation in that story there. So yeah, that's our main channels.
Definitely. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so that way our listeners who are tuned in could go ahead and visit you. They could always check you guys out at getcensus.com. What role does a website then play for client acquisition, Sil?
Yeah, I mean, so going back to what you said, like it's very interesting because our website is basically focusing a lot on like the what and the how, right? Because people know that someone told them, hey, you should check out Census to do these things, right? So people come to our website to really make sure it does what the other person told them what it could do, right? So it's like very much like, yeah, we support your integration. Like if you go to our website right now, it's all about like checking the box. Do we work with your technology stack? Do we support those objects? Do we allow you to do the email possession dreams that you have? Like it's all about like confirming what they are coming for here, right? Like, and we actually don't focus too much on the why, which actually, you know, kind of like some people could say it's like a weakness of our website. It's like, you know, if you don't know anything about Census, right? Like you might be like, why should I care? Like, you know, what's the purpose of this thing, right? And so we just made a conscious decision to be very focused on like, if you know about Census, the goal is to convert you to, yes, you came to the right place, right? Like that's the idea. And so the role is really much like a conversion. If you go back to your initial question, like the role of a website is to convert you to the next step in the funnel. It can be, you know, a demo request, obviously, this is like very nice, or start your trial, right? Or what we call like consuming a high intent assets, right? It's like, it can be like a guide to buying a reverse ETL tool ebook, right? Like, nobody's going to download that ebook if you're not interested in like reverse ETL technology, right? And so like that's very much like a conversion assets for our website.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Great to hear that. Then on that note, Sil, is there any tools or tips or methods that you would recommend to our listeners as far as some website lead generation?
Yeah, for sure. I think the key thing that that I've learned from my career, right, is like every pages need to have a purpose to be relevant to the reader, right? Like, so I'm not saying, I mean, of course you can go down the rabbit hole of like insane personalization or website by industry, you know, using technology like Playbit Reveal and now like technology like Pathmark, right? Like that does that for you on autopilot. But I think at the beginning it's like, you know, who's the person who's expected to read this page on your website, and what's the next action they can do from this website? Sometimes it's not, you know, book a demo, you know, a high intent conversion rate. Sometimes it's just as simple as like the best next action is to go read something else to further their education, right? Like getting them to like a, you know, from a education content to like an awareness content, awareness content to education content to converting content, right? And sometimes it's something that is very important to think about, like the relevancy of those pages, right? And that's something I learned, and you know, there's lots of tools out there, but also like just framework and methodology, like things like, you know, still a big fan of like the AIDA framework, like to write like good copy and messaging, like, you know, like it just help people understand the value of this page, right, to them, and help them like make it relevant and personalized to the audience that you have. Like, obviously you're going to say no to a lot of people because, you know, if I talk to you about like specifically how to get value from Snowflake, a warehouse, to marketer or marketing tools, like, you know, if you're a sales ops person, you probably don't care about that, right? But like if you're a marketing ops person that use Marketo, it's going to be very specific to you, and you'll be like, yes, I have exactly this problem. I want to learn more. Like I want to solve these things, right? And so it's like that high relevancy of the page is very important. So.
Definitely. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing those tips and methods, Sil. And well, let's jump. Let's switch gears a little bit, Sil, and let's talk about you as a leader. You being the head of operations at Census, what are some key tasks you like to focus on your day-to-day work?
I think right now, like the key tasks are still like, you know, making sure we work on like the right project, like from prioritization, like operation is like a whack-a-mole department. There's all like, you know, the number of tickets and tasks to do is never ending. You start with 20, you end the day with 38, right? And so it's like, how do we prioritize like the right project that deliver more value to the business, right? Like, so it's like, whether it's like a big push to open a European office, right? Like, what does that mean for operations? So we can support that kind of like international expansion. But it's also like, you know, kind of like allocating time right now to like, not just do firefighting. It's like, you know, how can we lead innovation in the company, right? And so like a good example of that right now is like I've been working a lot on like what we call like reverse outbound, like, you know, like cold calling, things like that, you know, kind of like a dying breed. I mean, there's a cold calling is like having like a revival a little bit right now. But you know, like nobody's like sequencing emails anymore because it just doesn't really work anymore. So it's just another added version, right? But like what seems to be working really well is like what we call like reverse outbound. Is like using the signal that people are doing on your website and be like, hey, you know, this account at Pathmark, they've been consuming this content, so we can infer what they're trying to achieve by consuming this content. And we know that they also, you know, like they've been attending our webinars, and so it's like collecting all that information and then scoring that, you know, with like, is that a good account for us? Going back to what you're asking me at the beginning, is like, is it a PLG company? You know, like, do we convert this type of company? Really, and then routing that to the right person and doing a lot of the work for them to help them more efficient, right? You know, so we route this account, and so you know, if you're like a 22-year-old BDR, you're like, oh, Pathmark is on our website. What does Pathmark do? Like, I have no idea. And so I think that's like super interesting with AI nowadays. Like, we do a lot of like AI summarization of account. Like, we tell them like what's the next best thing to tell this type of business based on what we know convert and what offers we have and how make it relevant. Right? So it's like they get this information package. So it's like, this website, this company was on our website. They consume this information. We think it's a good business because of like historical performance against this type of company. This is what they do, and this is what they recommend you to do, right? And so as a BDR, you just wake up and you're like, you have all these things waiting for you. I think like that's like a, you know, it makes people more efficient. It makes sure we're talking to the right people and not, you know, trying to, you know, spray and pray by like sequencing 6,000 accounts and hoping that, you know, we catch the right person at the right time, that they're actually thinking about doing this stuff, right? So I think that's like a good example of like the other type of more innovation project that we are working on right now.
Awesome. Right? Hey, well, that's a nice way to approach it. I love it. And in the between time sale, then, how do you stay up to date with all the marketing news, strategies, trends out there? Is there a preferred channel that you like to stay up to date with all the news out there?
Yeah, I think I'm lucky that I'm like very, you know, I'm in Silicon Valley. I'm like well connected with a lot of like founders, like early stage startup and things like that, people working at like cool companies. So I do get lucky that I get push information to me via LinkedIn, things like that, like constantly, or via my email inbox when people ask me about stuff. So I stay in touch with like, I would say that like the most relevant, exciting new technology. I see them through that network, you know. And then when it comes to kind of like learning, for me, it's like, you know, like learning is a journey. And so usually when I like, you know, going back to like the AI stuff, like for example, like I spend a lot of time just understanding like the basic of, you know, what is LLM, how does these things work? Like, you know, kind of like understanding like the fundamental. I spend a lot of time nowadays mostly like watching video on YouTube, reading content on like source of authority, and then I gradually go, you know, like go deeper on like the technical side. So I'll go look at like open source code on GitHub to understand how actually the sausage get made, right? I read white paper, things like that, and then usually I start implementing things. And at that point, it's like, you know, what's available out there in the world is not efficient enough in a way. And so this is where I go back to like a peer network. And so you'll be surprised how many times, like, you know, if you know that this company, like, you know, Pathmark, they're doing all this AI stuff, that's super interesting. Like, you know, I'll just reach out to people working at Pathmark and be like, hey, you're doing some cool stuff. Like, we'd love to hear how you do like these things, right? Or I've seen this post on LinkedIn that you mentioned that you do like automated outbound with AI. Like, I'm super excited to learn more about that. And I'll just book a meeting with them, and you'll be surprised how many times people are just telling you how they do things, and you can learn and you can ask them like, hey, did you have this problem? And then you can like this kind of like relationship, and then you can just email that, hey, I'm trying to do this thing. Like, can you help me out on these things? And so that's kind of like when you get to like experts, I would say level, like you need to go talk to like the relevant people, right? So that's kind of like that's how I approach like learning anything really in life. Is like, you know, start with what's available out there, read a book, blog, YouTube, then start talking to people who have been doing it for a long time and learn from them and get them to coach you, mentor you, train you, whatever. That's how I learn.
Definitely, that's an interesting, right? I think that just the experience goes a lot better, right? So awesome to hear that from you, Sil. And we'll just jump into our next section then here, Sil, which is our rapid fire question rounds. Are you ready for them?
Let's do it.
All right, then. So first up then is, what is the last book that you read?
So last book I read was like a fiction book. It was like Lightbringer, which is like the last book in the Red Rising saga. In a more like business book, the last book I read was called Range, which is a book about like how being a generalist, like jack of all trade, Jane of all trade, is actually a superpower compared to being a specialist, because you can basically, because you learn something on, on this thing, and you can translate that learning into another space, which is like a unique, knowledge, and that makes you like an advantage in that specific field over there where you might not be a specialist. So interesting concept, full range.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Great read there for our listeners. Next up is, if there be no boundaries in technology, Sil, what would be that one thing that you want to have fixed for your role as a marketer today?
So it's an interesting question. I suck at like time/project management, right? And so usually what I end up happening is like I actually hire someone to, complement that weakness of mine, like kind of like a chief of staff type of role, with someone who's like, crack the whip to make sure like there's order into the chaos. I would say, like I'm a big fan of AI stuff right now. So I would say like, if I didn't have to hire someone and AI could like project me and my team to success in a way, like, coordinate, that would be great to not have to hire someone. I can spend that headcount on a higher leverage role instead of someone to hire to hide my weakness. So like, yes, that would be great.
I think that would be great as well. Awesome. Next up then is, if there's one repetitive task that you could automate, what would that be?
Like reporting, not reporting, like generating dashboard, but like, like that is one thing. Again, I'm like, there's a trend here about AI, right? But like, I'm very bullish of like AI killing the BI industry. Like, I think like the Lookers of the world, Tableaus of the world, is like, they're on a dying slope, because the whole purpose of a BI tool is to generate reports, dashboard, whatever, like, so a human can look at it and say, oh, well, it's going up because of this thing. So generating insight, right? And I feel like if you have AI just generating insight, you don't need chart anymore, right? Like that's the automation part of like, right now we generate reports. A human has to learn the context of the report, do some digging, infer why is this thing going up. How many times you look at chart and like, hey, and so why did this thing spike last week? And like, well, let me dig onto this thing. I'll come back to you later, right? And then you're going to generate 5 of a chart to be able to answer that question. Again, like that's something that AI is actually really well suited to do. And so if AI can just give you the answer without giving you 5 charts, like we'll be very happy about that, right? And so I think there's a lot of like automation that can be helpful. And then same thing, like instead of like being reactive, or like, hey, here's your weekly report, sir. It's more like, hey, something just happened yesterday. Like more, I can alert the system, like more like a real-time insight generation. Like that would be, I think, very exciting.
I think that's it would be really exciting, not just, I think, for everybody, right? So awesome to hear that, Sil. And Sil, I love asking this question, right? I mean, you have a lot of experience already, but what is that one piece of advice that you would give yourself if you were to restart your journey as a marketer today?
Oh, what is the one piece of advice? I would probably, so I've learned to code like midway through my career, like, like I can code lots of things nowadays. And it was such an unlock in my career, right? Because I could market to developers, which was a big thing. I can do stuff myself without having to rely on like engineering to build app, update website, things like that. Like I can use AI nowadays and write like JavaScript or whatever to utilize that. And I can only imagine if I've learned to code like, year one of my career, I would have been like even further in my life, because I would have not wasted like 5 year plus not being able to code. Like, it's such an amazing superpower that, I would have probably learned to code faster in my marketing career, right? I would say.
Perfect. Awesome. Hey, some great advice there, not just for yourself, but for all our listeners as well. And so, I mean, we are coming to the end of the show, but before we do end, I do want to give you the last word. If someone forgets everything about the interview today, what is that one thing they should remember about Census?
Next time you think about like, oh, I wish they had data in this tool that I use, whether it's Marketo, Hotspot, Braze, like, whatever, like come check us out at Census, because we can probably get data in your tool without having to ask engineering to help you get data there. And it just works, and you can manage it yourself. So that's the last thing I would say.
Perfect. Awesome. Hey, well, thank you so much, Sil, for being on with us today. And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. And I'm looking forward to our next episode at Pat Monk Presents. Thanks a lot, Sil.
Thank you for having me, Ernesto.